I'm not fearing death. Maybe all the things that could potentially lead up to that. My body would not, you know, take one more step. It wasn't a good day or bad day. I'd met that threshold to where I couldn't take another step. Losing the ability to drive a vehicle is a hard one. What I'm experiencing is not a big ebb and flow of good days and bad days. The progression is a steady deterioration.
I'm Tim Green, and I have ALS. But this podcast isn't about ALS. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I'm a father of 5, married for over 35 years, a New York Times best-selling author, an NFL first-round pick, and a practicing attorney. This is Nothing Left Unsaid, where my son Troy and I sit down with extraordinary people for raw, honest conversations about life, its toughest trials, and greatest triumphs. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Today's guest spent years working behind the scenes in college athletics, helping athletes and teams succeed. In 2021, Ben Brandenburg, a longtime member of the University of Georgia Athletic Association, was diagnosed with ALS, a progressive disease that slowly takes away the body's ability to move. Since then, he has had to confront a question few people face so directly: how to live with purpose as independence disappears. Ben, I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Tim. Just an honor to be with you guys. I just met Troy here recently, but I've been catching up on some of y'all's episodes and just really impressed with the job y'all do and the range of the guests. I'll try not to let you down today. Just being new to the podcast, but I'm excited to be with you. It's an honor, and also just hoping I can learn from you, Tim. And obviously, you got to have a growth mindset with the world we're in, and so I feel like I should be conducting the interview, but looking forward to where the conversation takes us. And you had the nail on the head in the introduction about behind the scenes. That's truly where I've spent my time here at Georgia, just greasing the axle, so to speak, of the machine that is Georgia athletics and Georgia football over the years. And I've worn a few different hats, and looking forward to just sharing a little bit about that and also about the health journey. That's obviously feels like a career path in itself, just in the sense of how much information it takes to digest. And Troy, I know you've got a lot of experience in diving in all these different the research components and just the day-to-day management of everything. There's a lot. So I feel like that's certainly not the career path that I would have chosen, but I feel like that's been the path laid before me, and just trying to steward that the best I can. So just looking forward to the conversation, and thanks again for having me.
Yeah, no, we were pumped to get you on. You and I talked pretty recently, and then my first thought was we got to find a way to get Ben on here.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that there was a cancellation, and my mind was thinking, I know you had a relationship with Scott Sinclair based on your days at UCF, and there's a lot of great candidates around Georgia. So I know y'all asked that question towards the end of the conversation, but I'll be ready for that answer when the time comes. I'm giving you guys some referrals.
Well, you beat them all here. You were the first to ask, so tell that to Joe. I guess Benjamin Watson technically beat you, but we didn't bring him on for.
Yeah, well, Ben Watson, I listened to that episode, obviously. But there's a lot of great Georgia ambassadors out there. So Ben being one of them, but he comes back from time to time. But honestly, he's one of those guys. Him and Maria Taylor and some of these folks that are involved with TV, they're so busy on the weekends, particularly when we're playing. There's a lot of SEC network recaps and all that good stuff. So probably didn't get back as much as some other former athletes. He's a great guy, just a stud, and a great father, and yeah, and get great ambassador for Georgia. That's for sure.
I remember the moment my diagnosis stopped being a medical term and started being my life. When did ALS stop feeling abstract for you and become something you had to live with every day?
Good question. It was a really slow diagnosis. And I know from hearing a little bit about your story, it was something that, looking back, I was deteriorating even before it was ALS. It was what we were calling ALS. Around the birth of our second daughter, Shelby, that's just an earmark in time, but I was consistently twitching, and my muscles were twitching and spasming and cramping. And for a year, really a year and a half, I spent a lot of time trying to get to the bottom of what was going on. My EMGs at the time were checking out, and they called it cramp fasciculation syndrome or benign fasciculation syndrome. And I really didn't even love that term at the time, just because it didn't seem benign. And in my opinion, my body was telling me something was very wrong. But when it got cold in 2020, so this is back around COVID, is when my hands started to shut down, and I wasn't due for another EMG until February of 21, and that's when he, had the conversation and started genetic testing for Kennedy's disease, spinal muscular atrophy, and then the third one on the table was amyotrophic sclerosis. And I knew at the time what the conversation with my neurologist. He said, I know you have a motor neuron disease. I'm just not sure which one. And that conversation was obviously heavy, but it was a body blow, but not a crushing blow in the sense of our hope, obviously being in our faith, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But it was a long journey to get to that point, and I feel like even the deterioration was in a way creating some resiliency and some character elements that I needed for the journey. And so the sleepless nights leading up to the actual diagnosis and the cramping, the constantly muscle spasms, the deterioration of my fitness, not being able to work out anymore, all that leading up into the diagnosis. I think God was using that to, shape my character, so that, we wouldn't be swept away when we heard the word ALS. But Tim, I mean, a lot like you, when I heard that for a year and a half, I really went the opposite direction. I kind of understood that, hey, they weren't really offering me any solutions, and my conversations were never getting to any sort of root cause. And so I really went hard on an integrative and functional path to try to find some answers, and that journey, that ultimately was a tough year and a half in itself. But in my mind, it was a clinical trial to try to uncover something else that we could actually pursue some real answers. And it wasn't until I really needed clinic and what they offer at clinic, more the maintenance components of ALS, the breathing machine, the wheelchair, the all the different folks you see at a clinic, um, that those were things that were becoming a need in my journey. So that's why I obviously circled back to the world of that neurology phrase. But at the time, like you, I didn't want to hear even the letters ALS, and we went to get second opinions at Mayo and Johns Hopkins, and so the realization that that was the last thing standing. And I think a lot of folks that don't understand the disease progression maybe don't understand that it's a clinical diagnosis, that it's really a process of elimination. And for me, that was the last thing standing. So, and that's kind of where a whole new journey began. I mean, I felt like there was so much happened even before that point, until we were actually, being more open about talking about what was going on. So, yeah, it's been challenging for sure, but
Yeah, I remember Ben, when my dad first got diagnosed, he sat down me and my two older siblings at the time, and he told us, and he's like, I don't want to hear, like you said, I don't want to hear the letters A, L, or S together. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. Don't ask me if I'm okay. Like it doesn't exist.
yeah.
And life was pretty much the same for the next year. I mean, it's his hands were having some troubles, but yeah. And then just one day you kind of have to acknowledge that it gets to that point.
Like Tim, I mean, I think my mentality has been to to try to just do everything that I still can do, not focus on what I can't do, but what I can do. And we've tried to just, even with our girls and how we're raising them, we've tried to not give this thing any more power than it already has. We've tried to not ignore it, but try to be active and do what normal families do, um, and not just shut it down. You know what I mean? Um, and I think that's where, from a diagnosis standpoint, a lot of times, you hear those words in the discussion of, hey, 3 to 5 years. This is kind of what they expect. And a lot of folks may shut it down, and I think the body responds psychologically to what's going on mentally. And so I don't really love the company line, so to speak, and of how they diagnose it. But I think that's our common thread here was our doctor, Merritt Sokovich. I think the way she approaches things is really the appropriate tone in sharing all the things that are going on um, behind the scenes with ALS. So I'm pretty passionate about that. When I talk to other folks that are going through it, to try not to let the mental component shut down, because I think the body responds to that. Um, Even that year that I mentioned, where we were going hard in the other direction, at least at that time, the hope component of trying to uncover something else was something that still kept us going hard. So I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't change that approach.
You spend a long time trying to solve it before accepting it. Before ALS, people like us believe that hard work and discipline can solve most problems. What belief about control did your diagnosis force you to let go of?
Well, that's a good question. I think, Tim, I'm not a first rounder. Uh, I know that's shocking. Um, but I know you, coming up from an athletics standpoint, and the the fact that you would approach life that way, this disease humbles you And I think for me, it's not just a willpower component of what we're dealing with. I think there was a time where I approached everything with a one more rep mentality of, hey, I can do it, I can. But it gets to the point to where my body would not, take one more step up a curb or a step. And once you got to that point, it wasn't a good day or bad day. I'd met that threshold to where I couldn't take another step forward. And that, from a mental standpoint, is not something that is in us as competitors. And so surrendering that and understand that, hey, I'm battling as hard as my body will let me battle, but there's certain things that you're not just going to be able to push through um, and execute the day to day, and that's something that's so hard to swallow, and just the humility factor of every day of losing things that you love doing is heavy, and you're also sharing that with your family who's close to it and seeing that um, unraveling of our health. And so it's certainly a team element of them being present, but um, we've tried to do the best we can, and again, just trying to not give this thing any more power than it has, and trying to do as much as we can um, that I'm able to do, and um, trying to now. At first, I was always a step late, and I think Troy, in one of our conversations, you mentioned this, that I felt like I was a step late on the breathing machine, on the wheelchair, on the walker. Now, the wheelchair is a tool. I see it as that. I've put about 2,000 miles on two different wheelchairs, and I'm getting after it. I mean, my my daughters will climb up in my lap, and we've got a handicap van, and we call it the Silver Bullet, and we really go and do a lot still as a family. So we're just trying to just get after it, and I wouldn't change that approach. Looking back on this journey, and I'm gonna continue to push it as much as I can. So
My uh, on the lane that we live on, basically there's 10 grandkids that live within like a 2-minute walk of my parents' house. And my siblings and I try not to do like a lot of screen time with our kids, but they're allowed to when they're with Pop, which is what they call my dad. Basically, it's we say, well, what did Pop say? And he said, no matter what, he says yes. So they climb all over him. It looks like something out of I don't even know. I don't even know. It's like a jungle gym. There's kids all over. There'll be like 5 kids on his wheelchair hanging off the sides, whatever. And they'll be watching, whatever, some kind of Disney movie together. It's so funny.
yeah, you're probably not sure if it might be Tim that's one to watch all that stuff. You don't know.
There's actually a good story. I think I might have told it before, so I'll give you the short version. But my kids, so we were watching, I think it was Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, something like that. And we were leaving. And so we're in like the room, like we left, everyone said bye to my parents, and we're walking out the door. And my daughter was getting her shoes on. And my dad must have, he's using the eye gaze technology. So he went to close it out and accidentally hit play. So it starts playing. So in the other room, hear howdy kid, whatever it is. And my daughter's like, she felt just like defeated. She looked up at me like heartbroken. She's like, Pop is watching without us? I said, yeah, Pop loves Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
That's great. Yeah, this wheelchair that I'm in right now has got these. They're not like pegs, but my girls can stand on the back of the wheelchair. So Shelby will hop in my lap on the front. She's a little bit smaller than Abby, and Abby will hop on the back. So it's quite a scene coming down, wherever we are, and um, it's just part of the life for them. And it's like when we're looking up in the van, it's like they're strapping me in, and they're like a little pit crew, um, just getting me strapped in, and they've been great helpers, and um, so I'm hoping that that'll be over time. That'll be a source of strength for them. This journey. So that's just the way I see it. That the Lord's already doing a work in their lives, and try not to shelter that. And seeing me in some vulnerable situations, whether it was falling, and I used to be really self-conscious about that, but it gets to a point then where you mentioned it's just, hey, it's surrendering. It is what it is, and I'm not going to shy away from that.
You mentioned how gradual it was, but there is still a moment where it lands differently. People talk about ALS as a physical disease, but for me, the first shock was psychological. Can you tell us about that moment when you were diagnosed?
Yeah, I go back to that day from time to time. But as I mentioned earlier, it was already such a journey to get to that point. But hearing the neurologist talk about those words and understanding the gravity of the situation going into the appointment, I think you're hoping it's not that, but you already are aware that it could be in that category. Um, but something that happened in that appointment that my wife and I talk about a lot is she was grading papers. She's a first grade teacher, and she was grading papers. And one of her students at the bottom of the page had written Joshua 1:9, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God goes before you. And even in that moment, as surreal as it was, we were just trusting that ultimately this journey was set before us, and it was not going to sweep us away. We didn't feel like it was a crushing blow. It was certainly, we experienced a lot of grief in those days that followed. Um, but we also just kept putting one in front of the other, and just tried our best to not give it any more power than it already has. And I think from a mental standpoint, something that, for me at least, it's one of those things to where I'm not experiencing a lot of just ebb and flow of the progression. Meaning, I'm not having just good days or bad days. And I think that's a lot of folks when they reach out to me. Maybe they say, "How are you feeling?" I was like, "Well, let me give you a big recap of how I'm feeling." You gotta go through things of what not to say to people that are in our shoes, Tim. I'm sure you can empathize with that. The "How are you feeling?" question always gets me. But yeah, what I'm experiencing is not a big ebb and flow of good days and bad days. The progression is steady, but a steady deterioration of losing things that you enjoy doing, and things your body's done for your whole life, and you learn how to adapt. And I think there's so much resiliency in um, the human spirit. But there's certain points to where you've adapted and figured out, whether it's brushing your teeth or trying to help get dressed or um, you name it. You're adapting, but it gets to the point where you've tried everything, and so you're losing things you love. But sometimes you see somebody that maybe they've lost their arms or their legs, and you're always amazed at what they can do because they're able to adapt. And I think I've had that mentality of adapting as much as I'm able, but um, the loss is hard to swallow, and I just try not to sit in it. I think getting up every day is just where you're faced um, with the fact that hey, it's waiting on you. Whether you wake up at 3 a.m. or 9 a.m., it's there, and there's not really a period of time, especially with the breathing component now, where I'm not aware of what's going on, and I think it just has a way of zapping your mood and your psyche. I've just tried to, and I think the folks that are close to me have extended a lot of grace in that area. Uh, my wife being first on the list, but the breathing component, as I mentioned, is one that you can hear me getting short of breath. It's just that's something that's constantly there, and so it's just hard to just ignore it and press through. Um, so that's just been my experience of losing those things, but also adapting and having a growth mentality of figuring out things that I can continue to be activated on.
Once the diagnosis becomes real, the next thing you are forced to confront is time. When the doctor tells you your future may be measured in years rather than decades, there is a moment before courage or faith kicks in. What was going through your mind in that moment?
You're absolutely right because it's the reality that our days are numbered. I mean, you know that we all know that, or we should know that, but that's kind of self-evident when you think about it. But you're certainly not. Um, certainly in your early 30s, mid 30s, not to the point where that reality is something you're ready to hear. And so that was my experience of just, you know, a lot of prayer, but a lot of gut wrenching prayers that were mad prayers. And that's still a lot of times a posture I have, but there's still, there's still talking to God and running to Him and not running from Him. But I don't know how to really make any other sense of it other than ultimately because of the cross we're citizens of heaven and just understanding that reality just because it may be more brief on my end versus others, but we don't know that either. I mean, um, families are wiped out in a car wreck on one swoop, and I mean, we don't know. It's just um, the reality of things being hard in this life is that's that's promised. I mean, even Jesus said, "In this life you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world." And we're in this world, and tragic things. Nobody's immune to it, myself included. But yeah, that's certainly that understanding was not something that was natural in the moment, but um, it's something I've tried to lean into since that point.
How old were your kids when you got diagnosed?
Yeah, 21. So Shelby was born in 2019, and then Abby was born in 2017. So
Wow, that's
they're
tough.
yeah,
it's almost young enough that it's like I say to my dad, like, because people have said to me, they've asked me like, what do your kids think about your dad's ALS, and and I'm like, it's not different, it's not new, it's not, that's just how, that's pop, right? Like, they expect, when they see my dad, they expect the trach, they expect the wheelchair, they expect, at this point, they expect the goatee. I've never seen him with facial hair until 2 years ago. So it's funny though, because like when you're a kid, you don't really remember. It's just normal, right? It's not like, I was wondering with your kids, is like, I don't know how to say this without, it's just probably really insensitive. It's like they're not going to have the same fear, I think, because they're so young. They might have not, it's not like as real to them. And then they see you in a wheelchair. It's just normal that you're in a wheelchair rather than seeing, you know, it's almost, it's as crazy as this sounds. It almost, in a way, is almost better. It's like you either want to be younger or older. It's like that in between seems like it'd be the hardest.
No, I totally agree. It's they don't see me. They don't think of what I'm going. They don't think of that of the three letters when they see me. You know, they think of me as dad, and it's funny when they draw a picture of our family. That, you know, it's the wheelchair is not in it. So I always love that. I always ask my wife to, hey, put this one on the fridge, you know, kind of thing, because the fact that I'm not able to throw them over my head in the pool like I could when they were just born, you know, I'm still dad and still adding a lot of value in the house. I'm kind of like the head coach. I mean, I'm still really vocal, um, which is not ideal sometimes uh, for my wife, especially. Um, I'm kind of just on them a lot about just normal things, you know. Just our house is they've got both the girls have big personalities, and they've brought a lot of joy into our lives, and they're funny. I mean, and they've got, like I said, big personalities, but it's they're special, and yeah.
My dad's still, if you want to see into the future a little bit, my dad's still being the head coach, and my oldest sibling is about to be 36, and nothing's changed. So I'm sure you'll still be doing the head coaching thing for a long time.
Well, I say it, coach, just because I'm just on them, and you know, here at practice, Kirby's got anybody that's around our program know this. Kirby's got a microphone, and at practice, you can imagine he's always on the mic the whole practice, and nobody's immune to getting you know getting it from coach. Whether that's coach, whether that's an equipment guy, whether it's me standing over in the corner, or you know, my wheelchair. Like, nobody's off limits. It's hilarious. So I mean, the players get most of that, but you've got to be on your game and on your toes, and that's kind of the way I like it in our house a little bit. Sometimes I'm not able to intervene physically, like needs to happen if they need a spanking or something. But you know, um, it's a blessing and a curse, because a lot of times, since I'm not able to jump in physically, my tone can be harsh at times. But again, I just hope that they've extended me a lot of grace with that, and I'm going to continue to be the ankle biter when it's time to get out the door, and just still trying to add value in different ways around the house.
You spent your career supporting athletes and teams from behind the scenes. How did that role shape the way you think about purpose now that the fight is personal?
You know, Tim, I got into this world because at the time I wanted to coach, and I was helping out with the defensive side of the ball when I was towards the end of college, and you know, and you learn to take on a lot of different hats. But honestly, the way I merged out of the coaching um, philosophy of career path was just adding value in other ways. I merged into a full-time recruiting position on Coach Rick's staff, and that was just because I saw a need and was able to add value um, in other ways. I saw that the coaches needed help with a lot of the administrative stuff that, frankly, I was better at, and they didn't want to do anyway. So that's really been the way I've tried to add value in Georgia, and the way that, in my opinion, relates to the health journey is we've seen people show up and serve our family in ways that are shocking, just from whether it's generosity or whether it's just showing up and helping with yard work or fixing something at the house or meals. We've certainly felt, I'll call it the body of Christ through the way people have showed up and served our family based on their individual skill sets. And so I think there's a connection there between just adding value where you and doing what you're good at and leaning into your God-given skill set, and whether it's spiritual gifts or whether it's just personality traits. I've certainly seen that and recognize that in others. And so there's certainly a connection there between folks showing up for us and kind of my career path.
Working in sports teaches you something about ego and humility. How did those lessons change the way you approach this diagnosis?
Coach Smart has a phrase that he uses a lot. Humility is a week away. Well, I would say humility is a day away or an hour away. I mean, when you're dealing with this, I'm constantly being humbled, and it kind of, the health journey, realized how selfish in a lot of ways I was, and I guess we all tend to be from a human nature standpoint. But to your point, Sam, working in sports, it allowed me to, some discipline and sense of urgency. I think that's something that's a trait that we had good work ethic from my family upbringing, and my mom and dad modeling that for us. But working in sports added to that fire, and a sense of urgency. I think is a under appreciated trait, and you see it in others, but you also see the lack of urgency in others a lot of times. And I'll be honest, Troy, I know you can probably empathize with this, being in all these appointments, but I've jumped a few doctors in my time too. Or whether it's be somebody that's in clinic and just kind of going through the motions, I can sense that, and being in my seat, I just am able to skip through some of that from working in sports and just working around Georgia. And so you want people to bring their best and be, it's life to death. It's life or death to us for sure. And so the stakes are high. So I'm obviously letting them know that if they're half stepping. So one thing I wanted to mention was in our facility, there's when you're heading to the locker room, there's a big sign that says WIN, what's important now. And that's something that Coach Smart brought to this program. And he mentions that a lot, of just keeping the main thing, and asking daily, hourly, minute, and in the moment, what's important now. And I've seen that modeled, and I'm asking myself that every day. And a lot of times I get bogged down with things that frankly just don't matter. And so I've tried to recenter myself and be honest with myself about what's important, and constantly having that self evaluation of what's important is something that I'm working here, that I've taken to the health journey. Um, so that's something that I ask all the time of myself.
Those internal changes do not stay internal, they show up at home. Did ALS ever alter the way you thought about being a husband and a father?
Great question. I mean, I'd like to think that I was already a great husband, a great father, but I mean, we all fall short. But I I had a good dad and growing up, and still do. So that was modeled for me, and um, I think just again going back to the asking, what's truly important in the moment. I get bogged down with things that just don't matter and things that are small and frivolous, and I just be the best dad I can, and try to just make memories with my girls and with my wife, and um, but it's certainly harder, when you're not able to serve your wife physically in the way that around the house that you want to do. So being on the other end of that and having her, whether it's feed me or anything else around that I need, ultimately that's what we should be signing up for when in marriage. But the reality of it is that um, you never want to be in our shoes of receiving that. But I'm thankful that I've got a great wife that loves me that much to do that. But it doesn't make it any easier. There's still I get frustrated if I'm not able to insert myself and help the way I know I'd want to help. And so that's just something that's outside my control. And I know she understands that, but it doesn't change the how hard it is to again just be on the receiving end of a lot of grace and a lot of just sweetness from our spouses.
People often call us inspirational, but there are moments they never see. What is the hardest private moment ALS has brought into your life?
It's hard to bring it to just one moment, but I'll speak to the folks saying, encouraging you, inspiration. I mean, people say that to you, and that's not they're not just blowing smoke. That's how I feel about you, Tim. And it's not something that I really want to hear sometimes from where I sit, because I'll just be open. I'm just trying to do the best I can. But I hope that's just an overflow of my life, and that our identity is not built by what we're going through. I know I mean, I'm not thinking of ALS when we had this conversation. I mean, and I hope that's the same for me. And I do think that people close to me aren't thinking and just saying that because of what I'm going through. I hope it's just because being authentic and trying to serve them and the way that I'm being served. But it's hard to bring it to one moment because there's just so many moments of true loss. I think for me, um, losing the ability to drive a vehicle is a hard one. I was the kind of guy that was therapy for me. I'd just go driving in the country, back roads, whatnot, and just clear my head. And I would always drive our family. And so, just being something about just hopping in the car with just your family and being able to go on a trip and travel is a big thing. Very important to my wife and I. And so we, not being able to lead in that way physically was a hard reality. And also music. I'm a drummer, and we got to the point where, I remember the last Sunday I played drums at church. The reality was that I was feeling it leading up to that moment, and just knew I could barely, lift up to sticks. I really hung on as long as I could, and playing music. So those two stick out as uh, as moments. Just remembering the last time I played drums and the last time I drove.
When you go through moments like that, it changes how you think about everything. One thing ALS forces you to confront is the question of what life is actually for. What answer have you come to that you might not have believed before this?
Only easy questions today, Ben.
Yeah, I appreciate you throwing me some deep questions here, Tim. I appreciate that. Um, you know, um, I take some words from Paul. To live as Christ, to die as gain. Um, just understanding through the cross, ultimately, we're citizens of heaven, and understanding uh, that is our reality. That the battle's already been won, and that we're just playing with house money now. And what we're experiencing, myself and you, is very temporary, and so that's the reality. That is the reality for me and for you, and that's only because of the cross.
Some people say suffering reveals character. My own experience is that it also reveals limits. What has ALS shown you about both?
Yeah, I agree on that. Um, I hope that's true of my journey, that it reveals character. That's something that's hard to do as self study in the moment on that. Um, I see it in other people, but it's maybe harder to see in yourself. Um, what was the other one? It was character, and what was the
Limits.
limits? Yeah, I think I would go back to I might have touched on this earlier, but just from a competitive standpoint, it's hard to accept the limits, at least physically, of what this presents on a daily basis. Um, but I think I had enough gnarly falls, and I've flipped my wheelchair twice. Yeah, I understand limits, but you typically, when they become a reality from a physical standpoint, um, I've certainly pushed the limits there, but obviously there are limits physically from a physical standpoint. But I'm still mentally sharp and engaged, and trying to add value again, not figuring out different ways I can add value. Um, and also looking, I mentioned the career path earlier. I've tried to look at opportunities too. I mean, being this conversation with you guys, being one of those that I don't think you guys would have had me on if I wasn't going through this. It's one of those things to where Um, I've tried to just surrender and say, Lord, use um, this journey for your glory, for your kingdom, and trying to just be open for whatever He has, um, place I can continue to add value. So thanks for having this conversation. But this is definitely a conversation where I wouldn't be able to add value had I not had the experiences I've had.
Faith and hope become part of the public conversation around illness. My personal faith has grown exponentially, and I finally feel like I have that last piece I was missing through Jesus. In your journey, have you been able to find hope or faith? Because I know it can push others away from religion.
It certainly has deepened my faith, our faith, the way we pray. But the Lord was working in my heart and my life long before this. But I touched on this earlier about just His plan um, and the way He was refining me through some of the battles, even leading up to hearing this diagnosis. And I'm able to reflect on those moments now, even to the point of while we're still in Athens. I think God wanted us here. I know He did. Well, I look at the way this place has honored the journey, and also our neighbors and community that we have here in Athens, and just our friends have really stepped up. So I'm able to look back on the way God's has gone before us in this journey, and that's something that, as you're going through it, it's easier for me to look back on those whether it's a year or two back, to see goodness that has still been part of this journey. But
At the same time, there are still things you have to let go of. ALS also forces you to grieve the future you imagined. What part of that future has been the hardest for you to let go of?
yeah, Tim, I've tried to not get too ahead of myself with that. Obviously, it's if you sit and you can stay there too long. I just know from if you focus too much on that, I've tried not to focus on that because again, I don't know what tomorrow holds for myself, and I don't think that's the way we maybe should operate, of just being where our feet are. And so I'm still counting on Troy to keep stoking the fires to get something done, so that that I'm able to walk my girls down the aisle and um, just create memories with my brothers, and just things that even back to career path, just dreams that I had, that this is much different reality, but um, I'm still trying to be open for what the future holds, and still in a lot of ways excited about the potential there. Even though there's loss, and it's hard to project too far ahead, and and I think that's the hardest component of what we're going through. I mean, it's you get to the point where you understand what courage is, and you tap into a gear that you didn't even know you had. And I've listened to a lot of, whether it's former military ops guys that are going into battle, and they don't know if they're coming home, and they still execute the battle. They're not letting that fear control their actions. tried to implement some of that to the health journey as well. Of just I'm not fearing death, frankly. Um, maybe all the things that could potentially lead up to that I can get stuck on.
If you could go back to the last normal year before symptoms appeared, what would you do differently now that you know what was coming?
Gosh, that's a great question that I haven't really thought a lot about. It's like you dream of maybe in your dreams you're still using your legs or being able to swim or be able to, just being active. I think is just such a gift. And if you had it all back in one day, I would just be probably just very active. And it's not to say I wasn't before this, but so many things you take for granted. I think I would just have a lot more gratitude about a functioning body and just being able to work out or go for a run or I'm still able to enjoy meals, but just the goodness that is just grilling out with your family and just the little just those nuances of life are just so rich and just I think your awareness becomes so keen with this journey. You notice whether it's a bird or a tree to get to, I mean, I'm like an old man in my yard watching trees and birds and noticing things now that maybe I would have skipped over. But looking back on to answer your question about if I could go back, I think I would just be active with a sense of gratitude. And if I could have it all back, I would just enjoy I just love cutting the grass and just little simple things of life.
It's funny too because recently me and my siblings interviewed my dad on an episode, and at the time of us recording this, that hasn't come out yet. But I asked my dad that question, and his answer was like, going and getting a hot dog and going, and I was like, it's kind of like humbling and when in my position, right, is sitting here as whatever healthy and knock on wood, all that good stuff. Because it's like you expect some grandioso answer, but the reality is what you just said, what my dad said, it's just like basic things. It's just being active, moving around, appreciating. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like I already had a 10 out of 10 desire to cure ALS and do my part and whatever. But it's like when you hear it's not some big grandiose thing, it's just the little stuff and being with the family and physical activity and that stuff. I don't know, it pushes it.
That hindsight often collides with what you can no longer do on your own. One of the hardest things for me has been learning to accept help. What moment forced you to confront that loss of independence?
Yeah, I think going back to that year that I mentioned earlier about where I was going, I was running hard away from clinic, away from what the neurologist had to say, essentially, until I needed the maintenance component. But going back to literally falling on my face, falling in the shower, those stick out because once that's the reality of being outside your control, the reality sets in that, hey, I'm not able to prevent this. I mean, literally, I could trip at any given time and just don't have that reaction speed, whether it's getting your arms up and protecting yourself. So when you're in that vulnerable situation, it makes you trigger shy to keep walking the way I was, or you keep doing life the way I was used to doing. As hard as that was to let go of, that was unfortunately a reality that I had to deal with.
When people say your story inspires them, does that ever feel like a weight you have to carry?
I don't think of it that way because I don't think of myself like that. I think of it just working for the Lord and not for man. There's a lot of scripture that aligns with that, but sometimes when I battle with God about um, His will and His sovereignty, and ultimately, I kind of the reality is, like Jesus says, that His will is for us to abide in Him, to follow Him, and no matter what the cost is, no matter what how hard it is, the disciples, and that's literally one of the last things He told them, and it was a hard journey for them. And so I've tried to draw from that, and I've also tried to realize that um, and reflect on the fact that God's will and sovereignty, even aside, it's just God was. I know He was not caught off guard by this. It's not something that when He looked at my life and created me, so to speak, He knew this journey would be a part of um, what it was. Um, so that there's trust there that it's I also just don't want to let Him down, so to speak. I don't want to wish I lived a different way, or um, I want to just steward this suffering as best I can, and that ultimately brings glory to Him.
Have there been moments where it felt like your suffering had become a message for other people rather than something you were simply trying to survive?
Ooh, a message for other people. I mean, I hope so. I hope my journey or my suffering did impact somebody. I mean, in a similar fashion, the way yours has impacted me. I mean, um, I don't think I would know that right now, this moment. Um, just trusting that. I mean, there are folks that I've connected to through this journey, or maybe somebody's put me in touch with somebody that's either going through it or going through something that's serious from a health standpoint. But um, I just try to be true to myself and true to whatever's on my heart to share to others. But sometimes we don't know the impact, and so I would just say that I certainly hope so. I know I don't think God's going to let this go to waste. That He can use any of our stories. I think everybody's got a testimony, but and I think He can use it however He pleases. But I know from where I sit, you've certainly had that impact on me, and so and you probably didn't even know that until today. So um, I think that's something that I sure hope that is happening, whether it's now or even in the future.
Thank you, Ben. That means more than you know. For someone hearing this for the first time, that shift can be overwhelming. If someone newly diagnosed with ALS were listening to this conversation, what truth would you want them to hear that people often avoid saying?
I was going to ask the same exact question, actually.
Man, I feel like the gravity of these questions. I feel like everything depends on my answers. Golly, I would just say a couple of friends, guys that mostly guys I went to college with, that have shown up and helped me. I've expressed how I'm always, maybe I'll rephrase this. Tim, you can probably empathize with this, but you're always constantly out asking for things. Um, we're in this state of just of being uncomfortable, and you're asking, "Hey, move my foot. Hey, can I have a sip of water? Hey, in the evening, my wife, we call it pillow pong. She moves the pillows like 1,000 times for me, and I would just say that in those moments, a lot of people that are showing up to help, they're getting a lot out of it too. And it's hard to be on the receiving end of so much help. But I would just encourage somebody that's maybe listening that's going to bring joy to them too, to being able to serve. And I think that's just reciprocating their skill set and their um, desire to help. I think people are constantly. I can think if I had somebody close to me that was going through this, I would be looking for ways that, much like the people that have shown up for me, looking for ways that I can add some value to the journey and be a part of it. So I wouldn't shy away from that. It's not like I'm still self-conscious about that, and I try not to take advantage of that. But also, there are times where I know I've got to ask for help, and I think especially as men, that's not a natural disposition that we want to be in. So I would just encourage somebody to don't be afraid to ask for help when uh, when it's needed.
I'm going to piggyback on that for a second, Ben, and say I think as a family too, you want to help, but you don't want to overstep. So I think if you vocalize that, like exactly what you're saying, people want to help, and sometimes, most of the time, they just don't know how. And if you kind of invite them to it, yeah, they'd be more than happy to.
Right.
Years from now, if your children listen to this conversation, what do you hope they understand about courage?
And another easy softball. Thanks. Um, well, I would just hope that they would just understand me and just my character and just learn more about me. I'm always um, fascinated, hearing that old story from my dad or granddad or anybody that I can get getting a little bit of knowledge and perspective on. But from a courage standpoint, I would just say that um, just moving forward, sometimes to me, courage is not lack of fear, but in the face of adversity or fear, or anything that we're facing in this life is still moving forward. I mean, it's um, still that to me that's courage and just facing it. And I know we have to face the reality of it every day, but just um, getting up is the and getting my sweet CNA or my wife dropping me in this wheelchair seat and just going. That's courage because um, not focusing too much on the on the woe is me component and just trying to do the best you can with the resources available and just not embracing a victim mindset. There are times where that the bitterness and resentment are on the table, and a lot of times I drink from that cup, but I try not to stay there too long and just try to keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's the best answer I can give, and just doing the next right thing, which I know is a quote from Frozen because I know because I have a 9 and a 7-year old. or wait, 8 and 6 year old, um, doing the next right thing. That's crazy to me.
Okay, Ben, now take a minute to brag about your family.
Yeah, well, that's pretty easy, but I'll try to keep it short for the sake of the podcast. But start with my wife. She's been amazing. She is a first grade teacher, so we had that the reality like question. Hey, do you want to have you help me more or continue working? But honestly, it's been really sweet because the girls go to school with her, and it gives me a lot of peace that we're able to have those check-in moments throughout the day. And I've got some help at the house now for at least half the day, and come into the office in the afternoons. Um, but all that to say is to see how she shoulders that responsibility of being a mom, and um, it's um, lot of needs that I have, but she shows up every day, um, and I just try not to. I can be a high maintenance patient at times, but she's amazing, and she's been able to maintain her being a good friend and being just a good teacher and a good mom. All those things she's been able to manage that somehow. But we still have our moments. My really favorite time of the day. I stay up too late. She's kind of a night owl, but we just sometimes we stay up too late, and that's my favorite part of the day. Is just being with her in the evening, and just after the kids go down. That's my favorite part of the day. Um, and my girls, oh man, I wish you could meet them, Troy. You were telling me about your family. It's a scene in our house too, man. They're full of personality, full of life. Shelby, our youngest, is hilarious. Abby's really sweet, good big sister, and sometimes Shelby takes advantage of that. And we try to, tell Shelby, hey, you don't realize how lucky you are. Abby includes you on everything. And she's like kind of the stereotypical birth order, um, but they're really close. Do everything together, almost to a fault, to where there are times with our parents who both live in Augusta, Georgia, a little under 2 hours away. But a lot of times we'll split the girls up. We're like, hey, you're going with one, you're going with the other, because like that one-on-one time's really sweet. But the girls are so dependent on each other in a sweet way. But we're like a tight unit. Um, we do everything together, and um, it's fun. So I love our family and spending time together and trying to prioritize travel. I mean, you know how hard it is, Tim, to fly. That's not something I've mastered. So we drove last summer. We drove to Michigan. Folks said we were crazy, but upstate Michigan was, or not, like northern Michigan was beautiful, and the lakes and all that. And we flew to Boston actually. My wife and I flew to Boston to go see Merritt Sikovic. But that was the last time I flew. That was in October, and so we're trying to figure out the travel component because that's something we want to prioritize still. So whether it's a big road trip again like we did in Michigan, or actually flying. My wife's on me about trying to escape the Georgia heat for a week or two this summer. So maybe we'll come see y'all upstate New York.
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome too, with your daughters being so close. I wouldn't. My the memories I have of like I have so many awesome memories, but I have so many fun ones of just being with my siblings, doing nothing like at age, doing nothing or making up our own games and stuff like that. It's just so fun. That's awesome.
They They had their cat fights too now, but they still need each other, and it's really sweet.
Now, on to our final word segment, where we ask our guests a few rapid fire questions. What was the happiest moment in your life?
The birth of my daughters.
What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
Can I not say ALS? I guess I have to say. Let's just move on to that one. These are rapid fire, and I'm blowing. Good.
What are you most excited about?
I guess travel with my family.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Don't take anything for granted.
Do you have any book recommendations for us or for the listeners?
Man, Unbroken, Intentional Father by John Tyson. Green Lights, actually, Matthew McConaughey's good listen. He's an interesting guy. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, so that's 3.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
Goodness, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and looking forward to continuing the conversation. Outside of the podcast, and I'm going to be as vocal as I can to try to pump this thing up. Not my episode, but just in the sense of what y'all are doing. I think it's one of the better. I mean, I'm not just saying that, but I mean, you guys have done a really good job of asking thoughtful questions and getting to such a diverse reel of folks. I think, Tim, that speaks to your connections over time and the life you've lived. But I was blown away by some of the guests y'all have had. So I'll try to get folks listening down here in Georgia.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, before we let you go, Ben, last question we ask every guest. Now that you've been on the podcast, you got to meet us and kind of see what the podcast is about. Who are a couple people that you know personally that you think we should try to get on the podcast?
Yeah, you told me you were going to ask this, and I put a little thought into it. But I mean, good luck getting on Kirby's calendar. I'll just say that. That's a long shot. I would say Coach Richt. Mark Richt is obviously he's got tons of great stories of being, a coach, but he's also gone through Parkinson's disease right now. I think he'd be a great conversation. Some other guys that come into mind. Jared Wallace is a guy that I've become friends with here, and he's a Paralympian, and so he lost his leg in high school. Actually, he was committed to run cross country at Georgia, and he had a surgery that went bad, got an infection, ended up having to have his leg amputated, and became a Olympic sprinter. I can't list all his credentials, but he's got medals, he's got world records, he's a great guy. So that would be a really great conversation. Muhammad Massaquoi is a guy that played here. He was one of he's kind of Stafford's go-to guy in college. So we're around the same age. Played for the Browns for the most part in the NFL. But he was after his playing career, he was in an ATV accident and lost his hand. So, you can imagine being a receiver and finding your identity and using your hands, losing your hand. Now, he's been a really inspiration for me, and just another stand-up guy, really impressive guy. Would be a great conversation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember watching him play. I didn't know clue about the hand. I didn't know that had happened.
Yeah, and that's just part of his story now. He was already doing a lot of consulting work and motivational speaker even before this, but it added a whole layer of adversity to his story. So, and the last guy I'd mention that is Malcolm Mitchell, who's got I can't remember if he got 2 rings with with the Patriots or not, but he's definitely a Super Bowl champion. But um, I was working in recruiting when we signed Malcolm back in the day. He was a great college player, but when he was in Georgia, he he had a dream of writing children's books, and he's pretty open about this. But he struggled reading when he was growing up, and it was really sorts of shame for him. And so he really um, weaves that into his story now. He's written um, children's books. Tim, I know you're an author, so that'd be a really interesting conversation, just unpacking his turning something that he saw as a source of shame into a strength, and now that's his career path after football. So he's been those 3 guys, was it 4 guys, would be great, you know, um, conversations, and I guess Georgia would be our official corporate sponsor of Nothing Left Unsaid, and I would for sure think that y'all would have a great time with those guys.
Yeah, those are great ones. It's a really diverse range too.
Ben, thank you for sharing this conversation. Your story forces us to think more seriously about what matters, what endures, and what it means to live well, even when life becomes uncertain. Although this is a tough chapter for you, I know you will win the long run. God bless you and your 2 beautiful girls.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Troy. I enjoyed it. So
Yeah, we'll have to connect in person, whether it's us down in Georgia or if you end up coming this way, making a pit stop.
yeah, anytime you guys want to come check out Georgia, but I know pulling for the Falcons, getting these free agencies figured out, and I know I'm sure y'all be at the Benz at some point this year. So maybe we can connect on one of those trips.
Definitely. Thanks so much again.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.